Good morning and welcome. Welcome. Hello, good afternoon. Great to see you. Welcome to Psychological Safety, hosted by Click Global and IOD Glass Ceiling Group. It's great to see you joining. You're welcome to pop your name in the chat and say hi. Hello, we can see more people joining on now. Thanks for joining. We're just going to wait for more people to join. We have over 90 people registered, so that's very exciting. Welcome, everyone. Couple more minutes, one more minute, and then we'll kick off. Good afternoon and welcome. Please pop your name in the chat and say hi. Say where you're calling from. Hello, welcome. Great to see you all here. Fantastic. Just waiting for another couple of seconds for more people to join. It's lovely to see you. Welcome to Psychological Safety. Hello. Right. Okay. Fantastic.
And as we just wait, Vanessa, for people to come in, it would be great if we could pop up the first question. And that is, what is your current understanding of psychological safety and its importance for team performance and well-being?
Great to see you all. Welcome to Psychological Safety. We've just popped up the first poll, so feel free to tell us your understanding of psychological safety and its importance in team well-being. If you can see the poll, please let us know what your understanding is. And I'll give you a couple more seconds on that. 5, 4, 3. Oh, we can see more respondents coming in now. It's changing. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining. And we can see the people interacting with the poll here, current understanding of psychological safety and its importance in team well-being. Okay, all right, couple more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'm going to share the results. Can you see those? Sri, would you like to comment on those results?
Yeah. So really, it's very interesting. So we've got 9% saying excellent current understanding, about 61% good, 22% partial, and 9% poor. So really interesting. So a bit of a spread, but a lot of our people here are, interested in this subject and have a good knowledge, and fantastic to have people who are interested and wanting to learn more. So very, very welcome today.
Fantastic. Well, welcome to Psychological Safety webinar hosted by Click Global and IOD Glass Ceiling Group. It's great to see you all here today. The presentation will go for around 30 minutes and then we'll have Q&A. Please put your question in the Q&A box, as we will not be checking the chat for questions, and we'll aim to wrap up at around 5 to the hour. Welcome to Psychological Safety webinar again. When the Boeing spaceship went, you may have wondered why, but that team knew why, and now the world does. It was because the manager didn't want to know the problems. Amazingly, new research shows that the top indicator of high-performing teams is psychological safety. If you can embed it in your team whilst fostering longevity and performance, it's a no-brainer. When Sri told me about this, I was so astounded, and I have to deliver something on this, and here we are today. I'm Vanessa Dalbusco. I'm chair of Glass Ceiling Group. I'm a marketer, and through my company, I raise company and personal profiles with social media, events, and content. I'm also a volunteer at the IOD in my role as chair of the Glass Ceiling Group. The IOD represents 20,000 members. It was awarded Royal Charter status in 1906, and it's the only institution that can issue Chartered Director status. Its core principles are connect, develop, and influence, and the Glass Ceiling Group advocates for more women in leadership positions, which is really relevant to our topic today. Now I'd like to introduce today's speaker. She is the National Clinical Lead and Consultant Psychiatrist for Mental Health Rehabilitation, and she's also chair of the Association of Mental Health Providers. After completing a PhD at the Institute of Psychiatry, Psychology and Neuroscience, she founded Click Global, which is a workforce wellbeing service developed with the support of the NHS England and Improvement Clinical Entrepreneur Programme. In her day-to-day role, she supports people with the most severe mental health conditions, as well as developing training and service standards nationally and internationally. She's a published author in peer-reviewed journals, and she co-edited and co-authored the primary textbook on rehabilitation psychiatry in the UK. Her awards include Royal College of Psychiatrists Psychiatry of the Year, Psychiatrist of the Year, and National Clinical Excellence Award. She was awarded a CBE in 2019 for services to rehabilitation psychiatry. Welcome, Dr. Sridevi Kaladinghi.
Vanessa, thank you so much for that very kind introduction and for organising this with us. Really fantastic to be a part of the Institute of Directors and get a lot of support from you in the Glass Ceiling group. And welcome to everyone who is on our webinar today. Huge welcome and thank you for joining us. And I really think that this will be hopefully a really interesting and very useful session for all of you. So without further ado, just to say, we've had a great introduction there already from Vanessa, and I suppose just to tell you a little bit more about me and why I'm even interested in this space. So it's really clear that there is a whole lot of evidence out there that can really help to improve their resilience, to improve their well-being, to perform at their highest levels, both individually and as teams. And psychological safety obviously comes right into that element as well. And really through my kind of various leadership roles, my personal experience as well, I have understood that and seen it and really wanted to do something positive in this space. Because I'll talk a little bit about what happens when we don't have psychological safety and the really significant impact, and literally people dying. We've heard about one example there, but it's not unusual in healthcare either when we don't have psychological safety for outcomes to be really significantly worsened. So that's partly really one of my drivers for being in this space. And also from a whole kind of well-being and keeping people in the workplace, avoiding burnout, and also anxiety, depression, all of those things. I've also seen how the lack of psychological safety really heavily impacts on that. So again, that's why this is such an important area and a passion of mine. So I've said a little bit about what then happens when we don't have psychological safety. And when we look here at the whole issue that happened with the space shuttle, and you'll all be aware of this, I think most of you. I don't know about how much detail you'll know it in, but of course, space travel has always been risky, but we've been able to do it, with fairly good results for quite a long time now. And with this particular mission, what had happened was previously the NASA would always have a lot of the engineers, the actual astronauts in at all levels, including at the kind of senior leadership type level of the organization. And it had become a little bit more managerial. It had become, I guess, more corporate in a sense, and that changed. And as a result of that, first of all, you can see how these individuals we know they train for many years. They have to really from the beginning, at a very early age, want to be in this kind of job because of the training, because of the dedication. So really this is a kind of life ambition for people who get into this. And what happened was, as we had this change as I've described, into more kind of managed and corporate space where you had fewer of the experts from an engineering and a astronaut perspective in the kind of leadership position, was that as things came up, problems were identified, that they were not well received. Those in management who wanted to get on with the missions, wanted to progress things, were really kind of not wanting to listen to why things couldn't be done, why they couldn't progress, potential challenges around safety and so on. And one of them was this foam, the foam that would break off and was needed for the whole kind of functionality, but they were having problems. And the engineers raised this many times and it was always pushed back. The engineers wanted to have some testing, more testing, but that would have meant a delay and that was not welcomed. And of course, we know as a result of that, what happened is on re-entry, a piece of that foam broke off and caused the whole shuttle to explode. Okay, and 7 crew members were lost. Okay. The learning from that is it could have been avoided. Okay. And psychological safety is at the absolute heart of what would have made a positive difference in this situation. So when we think as another example about the healthcare environment and a non-psychologically safe environment, I'll give you an example. So if we have something, it's very common for people in A&E to come in and need CPR, so cardiopulmonary resuscitation. And what happens is you have one person in charge and they shout, they call the shots and they're telling everybody what to do. If they, for example, sometimes may make a mistake, because the training is good, but of course it's a high pressure environment. We're only human. People may have been up for a very long time. They may be, running towards the end of their night shift and be tired. And when that happens, I've seen this where a nurse has piped up and said, actually, I think we need this particular injection, this particular dosage at this point, and they've been shouted at. Okay. And when that happens, and they're shouted at, shouted down, not listened to, what happens is that individual nurse then didn't speak up again, even though he knew that what he was saying was right. Everybody in that room, in that situation, who saw that happening, felt a little bit intimidated and thought it just reduced their likelihood that they were going to say something, even if they knew that what was being done was not exactly right according to protocol. And that then doesn't just stay in the room, it goes on, it carries it, the ripples of that carry on outside that room as well for each of those individuals who've experienced that, the lack of psychological safety there. And in the NHS, actually, there's been a huge programme around civility and respect, and the evidence base around being civil, being respectful of others is really significant, and the impact that it has. And it can also be the other way around. So when people listen and are understanding, incorporate those views and concerns, people see that and they're much more likely then to speak up, to raise issues early on so that they can get better outcomes, for your organization and for your clients, wherever that may be. And there are numerous examples across all different industries of how important, this sort of ability to be oneself, to speak up when things are not right, and really kind of have something change as a result of that. So if we think about what psychological safety actually is, and there are these kind of 3 elements that we've found. So you can see the trust, empowerment, and openness is what we talk about in terms of when we've looked at all of the evidence. And it really is about, being able to turn up and say things when you need to, feel that you're going to be valued, and think and know that what you've contributed is going to be taken on board and taken as part of a wider kind of decision making and so on. When Google looked across thousands of hours of teams, what they found, the highest performing teams, the one thing that they had in abundance compared to the other teams was psychological safety. It's absolutely fascinating, isn't it? That something that sometimes we might think is a kind of soft skill or a sort of a softer power within the workplace is so powerful is so important to improving the performance of teams. And not only that, companies, many of you here today will work in companies where innovation, where new products are really essential part of being at the cutting edge of staying ahead in terms of competitively, and that is all absolutely improved with psychological safety as well. So the other thing to say about that is that as we really have accelerated all of our progress, when you look at the graphs of how much the human race and our sort of industries have changed over thousands of years, what we know to be true is that in this century we'll have the equivalent of about 20,000 years of progress, and really for organizations, for individuals as well, to really be able to work at their best, everybody needs to be able to contribute fully. So again, psychological safety is it's not nice to have, it's an absolute must have. So these are some of the key benefits that I've already touched on. And one of the things that I haven't said so far is this, real improvement in engagement. And you can see that, can't you? When people are valued, when they are listened to, when they can see that what they've talked about has been acted on, they're going to be more engaged. And as a result of that engagement, you can pick up issues earlier, before it becomes a problem, halfway down, or just as you're about to release a new product or a new service, you can hear about it right up at, earlier, and do something about that. And that, of course, improves both that the team and the individual's engagement and ongoing work at a higher level. It also obviously benefits the organization, and benefits your productivity, benefits your profits, and also reduces turnover, because people who are being listened to, engaged, are less likely to leave. Improves that loyalty. And also it's less stressful when you can talk about issues that come up, not having to hide them, or not being able to air them properly and get them resolved. And of course then that helps with reducing stress and burnout too. So what we did was, in CLIP Global, is have a really good look at the literature, because there are a number of really good models out there, and it's about finding something that is all-encompassing. And that's something that I really kind of enjoy doing, is taking a really good look at what the evidence shows and good practice, and putting that together. And we've developed this framework. And as you can see here, this framework is made up of these 3 different elements, and it's really key that we think about them together, okay, because they all impact. So the leadership, what are the leadership like, what do they like, what are their skills, what does the whole kind of health and well-being piece look like alongside the psychological safety, and they all kind of interact. So if we look at this then, I'm just going to ask, could you just, this poll is coming up right in the middle of my screen. I don't know if others are seeing it as well. Can you just remove that for me? It's still right in the middle of my screen. Close it. Hold on, just bear with me. Apologies about this. There we go. Okay. So this is really one of the case studies that came up for us, and we worked with it's an SME around 100 employees, and they're in hyper growth. So they were starting to have some issues with staff turnover, with people, clearly not being able to speak up around issues that they were seeing, and that was starting to impact on the kind of innovation. It's a highly innovative organization as well, and they needed that innovation to stay ahead and to grow and develop. And they could start to see also that there was a level of lack of transparency. So when people made mistakes, they were held back. They were held back in their careers, and it was spoken about. Oh, so and so made that mistake. No, I don't think they should be going for that. I don't think we should put them forward for that promotion. And that was so it was a real kind of challenge at that point. And the leadership, who were very, very, very switched on people, said, right, we need to do something about this, because we're in hyper growth, and we need to get this kind of sorted out, and shifted, and really strong psychological safety embedded throughout, so we can kind of build that culture in a positive way as we grow. So we came in and we did a whole sort of series of initial assessments, and using those kind of 3 elements. And so some of the findings, if you just look here, and these are all kind of, we have shifted some of them obviously to kind of keep it anonymous, and using this kind of approach of individual, organizational, and also then internal and external, of what the individual can do, what the organization can do, and then external, what they need from external sources. We were able to really kind of look at what was needed for that particular organization at that particular point in time, and across different staff groups as well, different levels of staff groups. So this whole embracing feedback, there was another thing, that feedback was often seen as very negative. So supporting leaders to be able to give feedback in a way that could be positively received, and also building up the rest of the teams to understand that that is for growth, it's positive, and then it comes with good intent. So and this whole idea of learning from failure. And there were other things that came through: inclusivity training. Whose voice doesn't get heard? Often people with various protected characteristics, right? So how can we make sure that everybody's voice is heard? And inclusivity training was a key part of that. And then this idea of kind of being curious and having a coaching approach as well. Then when we came on to the health and well-being aspects, what was really clear is there were high levels of burnout, and also high levels of MSK challenges, musculoskeletal. So these were some of the areas that we needed to absolutely look at. And processes. So what would happen is that senior staff would sometimes see a particular product quite late on, and then there would be a whole lot of reworking that needed to do. So just simply sorting out some of the processes meant that there could be a significant reduction in the kind of time pressures that went on there, of having to suddenly rush at the end because they're having to make a lot of changes. And this whole thing of role modeling self-care, in order that everyone can see that it is given importance, and that it is something that the leaders in the organization do for themselves, and that gives permission for everybody else as well to do that. Okay, there's various other good supports that were put into place around mental health training and support that were really important as well as a bespoke framework. And then when we think about leaders, all sorts of things that are to do with actions and attitudes. So I don't know if any of you have heard of this idea of what's it like to be on the receiving end of me. And I talk about that in my coaching sometimes, and people pause and they think, oh gosh, yeah, a bit sharp sometimes, not always good. And so it's reflecting on that, how, and often it's usually not done with bad intention. It's just that how we then can understand how we manage our own emotions, how we manage our own interactions with others, and can really kind of do some of that internal self-acceptance, self-compassion work. Because when we can do that as individuals and as leaders in whichever position we're in, that is what then spills out, projects out to others that we work with. So how we are is so important, how we can manage ourselves. And that's where, as you will know, all good leadership starts. So it's really important to think about, psychological safety in the broader view of things as well. It's not about, it is very much about still improving, learning from growth, challenge, adversity. It's not about being all softly, but it is about doing that so that people feel supported when things have gone wrong and you can learn. And obviously the airline industry have got a really good method of doing that with the black box. And that came about, as many of you will know, because there was so many kind of safety challenges and it was very difficult because people felt blamed. So by putting in that kind of black box recording of everything, reviewing, not blaming, the safety went really significantly, it was really significantly improved. Okay, and we see that in lots of other settings. And again, coming back to the healthcare setting, where we can have, a kind of quality improvement approach and that kind of learning approach from serious incidents, and spread that learning so that we try to reduce anything like that happening again. It's really kind of important and makes a really positive difference. And also recognizing, that work and employers can't be everything to everyone. We live in this, volatile, uncertain, sort of complex world right now. We do. And just kind of trying to bring that into consciousness and talk about it, think about that, provide some reflective spaces, and also provide people with skills and tools can be really, really powerful. And also, we need to stay competitive. Businesses need to bring in the money and delivering on these client expectations. So it's not easy by any means. So when we put together all of our particular elements using the evidence base and using the best practice, this was for this particular organisation what they needed to be doing, and that was based on all of the assessments as well that were very bespoke. And of course, we can't do all of these things, certainly not at once. And so we workshopped this, and they picked out the top 3 that were going to have the biggest impact. And the model that we use also looks, first of all, we have to think about internal psychological safety along the lines that I was already discussing, because without that, it's difficult to have a psychologically safe organisation. So the individual themselves has to think about, what are my schema? What things do I have that trigger me? And some of those are not to do with work. They are to do with other experiences that happen throughout their lives. And by understanding that, by processing some of those things, it means that you can get to your next levels of kind of development, really, and understanding and ability then to turn up differently in all settings, not just work, but in all settings. Working on mindset and openness to challenge, which needs a level of confidence, doesn't it? So this is why this internal work is so important, as a kind of bedrock at the beginning. And then thinking about drivers and outcomes. Okay. So I'm just really interested to hear, what is the current level of psychological safety do you feel in your workplace? And I wonder if we just pop that poll up again, please, so we can see what people think about this right now. And I'll just give you a minute to do that. And whilst people are responding to that, one of the things that I also wanted to talk about in terms of psychological safety and the importance of how all these different elements come together. It's a very personal story of mine. So I was in a senior leadership position within my organisation, as well as leading on a national piece of work in another organisation. And I had some additional work that I was going to do. It was a kind of whole organisation strategy, and it was not being further resourced. We had to find resources within what we already had. And unfortunately, the line managers that I had at the time, and again, you know, everybody has their own pressures and has their own kind of things that they need to work on, and own sort of people that they need to answer to. But as a result of some of these pressures, that pressure also meant that there was a lot of lack of transparency. You know, I came to hear that there were, there was undermining going on, comments that were being made that were kind of unhelpful. And for me, what that triggered, and this is where the internal bit, the organizational bit, the leadership kind of comes together. For me, somebody who's always done very well, gotten on with people, a people pleaser, you know, and raised to be that, it was really hard to hear that people who were senior to me, my leaders, my bosses, were saying these things about me. Okay. I mean, I later found out that they actually were saying them about lots of people. We had a whole kind of exodus of a layer of leadership as a result of these particular individuals actually not being good leaders. But anyway, the impact on me was that I suddenly thought, gosh, and it really triggered something in me. And when I've kind of understood this from as a psychiatrist and with all of that background, what I understood was that having somebody in a senior position to me who had power over me, who could make decisions about, my salary, my job, all sorts of things actually, took away some of my control. And it also made me feel very unsafe and very vulnerable. And if we go right back to almost kind of primitive times, when we were not in the club, in the tribe, and if we were to be rejected, that would mean pretty much certain death. So it's really fascinating to me how some of these things, I think, were an interplay of all of these, what really triggered something for me that meant that I got to the brink of burnout. And I had to work really hard, using the evidence base that I knew of to come back from that. So you can see just how important, these kind of different elements are and how they kind of interact with one another, okay, in an interface. So this is good, just looking at this poll in terms of psychological safety currently. We've got 20% saying that currently in their place of work it's 24%, okay, excellent, 43% good, 19% say it's kind of partial, and 10% poor, 5% very poor. So, quite a mix, but it's good to see more of it up towards that higher end. Share those results so you can see those. Okay. And just stop this again. There we go. Okay. So I've talked about this already, really, and how key it is about this ability to express yourself without fear of judgment. So that turning up as your whole self. So this whole, first of all, initial discovery, okay, the assessments, and then analysing what all those different metrics mean and putting those together from a lot of different evidence-based sources that we know have meaning and translate into what needs to change and that will translate into positive change in these particular areas. And understanding what the specific pain points are for that organisation too, which will all be different, of course, and they'll be different at different levels of an organisation. They'll be different at different times within an organisation, of course, as well. And then really developing that tailored science-backed solution to address what those identified gaps were. And I think the really important point is to get things started as quickly as possible, so people feel that there's positive change happening and they can start to feel a difference. And a lot of that, there's certainly some things that the individuals, the teams, the organisation need to just get on with straight away and, you know, be supported to do that. And then there may be other things in terms of, okay, we may need some support around, I don't know, improving our coaching skills, so that we can, you know, work with people differently in a more learning, curious way, as opposed to, say, a more kind of dictatorial type style of leadership. So, you know, this is about getting on, moving things forward quickly, but then understanding what is my plan here in terms of how I'm going to improve on the different areas, and what are my opportunities, and what do people want as well. So allowing them to have a say, it's really important, I think, as well, in terms of what are the best next steps that we should be taking as a team, as an organisation. And then delivering on that. So, you know, really kind of executing and monitoring, so important to make sure that you're seeing what the actual outputs are and what the evaluation shows. So again, you can iterate. It's an ongoing process, isn't it? We don't, you know, we don't go from, you know, one place to another and that's it. We iterate, we improve, and of course things change over time as well, and maybe you need a bit of a refresh at certain points in time too. And so these were just some of the premium bespoke sessions that we put in additionally for that particular organisation, and that's with others too have needed elements of this, but this is just one example of a kind of suite of further work that was done with that particular organisation, that we also obviously measured the impact of that. Okay, so we're very much this whole idea of live your genius in CLIP, very much about really unlocking people's highest potential. And as we do that, the skills, the mindset, the culture that's built up absolutely kind of shifts people's well-being. It keeps people in work, it keeps people in the place of work as opposed to turning over, and improves performance and growth. Okay. We've worked with lots of people, and there are more coming on board all the time. And we'll share this slide, and you're very welcome to sign up. We have some free elements as well, like mindfulness, for example, and some of our coaching sessions as well. And what I'm going to do is just ask if we can drop this into the chat, please, for people to start to fill in the session feedback. And I'm now going to stop sharing my screen and open up to questions. We've got about 10 minutes, I think, for questions. Okay. So
thank you so much, Sridevi, Dr. Sridevi. I found it very, very interesting, particularly your story, and thanks for being so open. Just while we wait for some questions to come in through the Q&A, I had a question about what the person can do if they are in your position. What is an action that they can take?
So in my position, in the sense of my place of work, I think anybody, so whatever your position, it's first of all understanding some of this. You know, how is this impacting me? How is it impacting my team and my organization? And how is it impacting the end users, whoever that is, you know, whether that's patients or whether it's, you know, customers who are buying something from me, or so just understanding and trying to think, okay, what could be the kind of low-hanging fruit here? What could we do? What could I do to make a shift? Who else could I speak with to start making a shift? Who could I raise this with, who will kind of be alongside me and support some of these changes that might need to be made? And obviously, you know, reaching out to others who can help them externally as well, if that's needed. And often it is. It's that whole thing of, you know, when somebody else comes in and can do a kind of more thorough review where people are able to be more honest, that can be really helpful as well. And then kind of working to put in the steps that are needed.
Thank you very much. And we have some questions from from people who've joined. Thank you from Liz Crutchley. Hello, Liz. Liz would like to know your view on the importance or the role of psychological safety when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Really important question.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's such a key area. And of course, we know that people talk about it, don't they? They have to put on their kind of game face. They have to put on their kind of persona for work, and they've got another persona outside with family and friends. So in terms of psychological safety, when you have people, particularly with who are different, who have differences from the kind of main cohort of people, then it is really important to understand, how their experience may be different, how to support them to feel safe. And for example, there are things like staff groups. We have a group for ethnic, Black and minority ethnic people to come together and speak, so that if there are issues for us, we can, feel understood and be given that kind of time for reflection, and also have somebody who can go and then speak to others, and have an exec who's in charge as well of supporting that group. Women would often have that group as well. And in mental health, we also have often a lot of people come in with, who are experts by experience, who have lived experience or living experience of mental health issues as well. And so, yeah, really making sure that whatever those kind of differences are in terms of the DEI element, that we're thinking about that, we're putting into place as an organisation structures that can support those individuals and groups to be seen, heard, feel psychologically safe. And that's work. It takes work. And we've seen across, the system. I mean, we had the fire service recently, we've had the police service, so many things coming up. One of the things, I guess, that I would say as well is that because it's, in the news recently, we saw all the stuff with the Harrods boss, and that's been repeated so many times with women and the harassment that they face, sexual crimes against them, and how it is all kind of covered up. So psychological safety, when that is present, that would not happen. So you can just
Absolutely.
sure it is.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And we've just done an event with the Lady Mayoress on preventing violence against women and girls, which was on the new legislation preventing sexual harassment in the workplace. So it comes in on October the 24th, and there is a duty on all employers to prevent sexual harassment in the workplace, to take steps. So there was a case of a croupier in Mayfair, and she had protected characteristics, not just being a female. And the court ruled that even though there was training and there was some kind of awareness in the company, because there was not working groups that lady had asked for, working groups on tackling discrimination, the company actually lost the case. So working groups are very, very important. Thank you for that, Sri Devi. Sarah, hello, Sarah. What Sarah would like to know, Sarah Clark, what does a psychological safety champion involve, please?
Great question. So psychological safety champion would be somebody who has a higher level of knowledge about the issues that we're discussing, some of the evidence base, some of the effective elements that we can put into place to create psychological safety and embed it within a team and an organization. And also, psychological safety champion, the peer group, having a group of people within the organization and even externally where they can have the conversations and sort of think problems and issues through, and also learn from others about how they're doing and what's going well in their organizations as well as what's not. So and it's very interesting because there is this in my national work I have a national clinical leadership role with NHS England for my particular specialty, which is rehabilitation psychiatry, which is really most complex kind of group of people, tertiary level. And what we do is we share best practice and we learn from one another. And it's so important to do that. Often we'll just look at what's not going right and we'll think, okay, what do we need to do in that space? Which of course we do need to do. But really, I think making sure we share and focus on what good practice is and good examples is so powerful. and also to sustain what we're doing it well, and also then to support others to kind of come up in those areas as well.
Fantastic education and getting people talking. I couldn't agree more. Thank you. Ray, hello, Ray. Lovely to see you. Ray Milne has a question. Do you feel things are improving generally or getting worse? And are there any global or regional variations?
That's such a great question. I think that there's huge variation, you know. Sometimes even within an organization, you'll see it. And a lot of that is to do then with the leadership, because you'll see where you've got a good leader who can create that psychologically safe space, and one team might be next to another team where the turnover is really high, people are leaving, people are off sick. So you can even see that variation within, one organization, definitely. And certainly, globally there is a difference. I guess in terms of psychological safety, wherever you've got more equity and equality, it's going to feel psychologically safer. So, for example, in some of the Scandinavian countries, certainly they've not got everything right by any means, but you can see where some of the greater equity and equality means that people do feel more able to, speak out, and there's a level of, if you think about at a whole country level, probably a greater level there of psychological safety. And you can also track some of that almost as a kind of it's a proxy measure, isn't it? Levels of happiness. So the kind of global happiness scales that people use as well. And it's always this, I think it's Denmark, isn't it? The Scandinavian countries come out really, really high on that. So again, it's about, sometimes you have proxy measures that can show you what's going on in terms of psychological safety as well. Certainly sickness levels would be a big thing to look at, mental illness levels, even MSK, because a lot of people who have MSK issues, actually they may well have also anxiety, depression, and sometimes they call it that because it's more acceptable, so all of that. I think a lot of the MSK issues are also linked to, not all of them, but certainly proportion to mental illness. And then the other question was, what's the first part of the question, Vanessa?
The next question,
I think it was the first part of Ray's question, actually.
So it was what happens on a global level,
Okay, fine.
and then on a global level, and then also the second part of it was, are they getting better or getting worse?
Getting better or worse? Well, I think that the variability is increasing. So what's happening is that some organizations are thinking about this, the one that I've just talked about now. They can see it's an issue, they're investing in it, and they're turning things around. And so there's a greater disparity between those organizations that understand this as an issue, getting on to do something proactive about it, and then the ones that are, I guess, being left behind, really, and that won't just be, they'll be left behind in terms of psychological safety, but of course they'll be left behind as a business as well in time too.
Also, more awareness, I suppose, creates more cases, perhaps, or more awareness is always better, but sometimes it raises the levels, I suppose, when it comes to prevalence. Thank you, Sri. Fantastic information there. And Marie McGrady. Hello, Marie. Welcome. Marie would like to know, how do we approach asking peers or staff, what's it like to be on the receiving end of me?
That is such a great question. So I think in terms of that, it depends on your relationship with them, I would say. I mean, certainly we have appraisals, we have 360-degree feedback. So you could just send something out like that, or get, maybe your coach or, your admin staff, somebody to send it out. Be really clear that it's anonymous, so keep it anonymous so you get that feedback. And that's such a powerful thing, and it can be quite shocking sometimes, actually. But it's brilliant, because when you do that, people understand that you're asking for that information to do something about it, to try and improve and be positive. So that in itself is really helpful for people to understand. And I think when it's done as usually as part of a kind of a package of coaching, can really reflect on it, think, okay, what can I change? Why is it like that to be on the receiving end of me? And the more we can learn about ourselves and our schema, our patterns of behavior, why we're doing that, where they've come from, learning the skills to manage those and change our own narratives. absolutely changes how we turn up in the work and how people experience us. It's so powerful. Those ripples can be amazing. You know, just that bit of, if you can be kinder and, you know, less kind of, or respond in a more positive way, and manage your own anxiety and stress, which we all have, and especially the more, you know, leaders have, the more senior you are, often it can be really lonely as well in those top leadership positions, because you don't have anybody that you can easily discuss these things with you who gets it. So finding, I think I would also say, find your kind of peer groups, and that's a really powerful thing too. But, you know, think about the coaching element and think about how to get the information, process it, and then think about all the tools and skills that you can have and get into place to make that different and improve it. And I
So
think
vital.
people would love you for that.
So vital. I think obviously understanding the self is our number one key to managing the way we react to things. And people do not want to speak up in the workplace. It's because of fear of retribution, especially if you're going through a change and you're changing the way your environment thinks about these things. I think that confidence building in that they can really talk about things is key, which is something coaching can definitely help with. We're really getting our money's worth from you today here, Sri. There's lots of questions coming in. Got 4 more. They keep coming in. Right, got a couple more minutes left. Graham, hello, Graham Fisher. Graham has joined an organisation with very poor psychological safety, and he can't force people to be comfortable, open and honest given their previous experience, but hope in time things can improve under his leadership. Do you have any advice, Sri Devi, on how Graham can improve psychological safety in the immediate term, but also in the longer term?
Yeah, so I mean, in the immediate term, I think it is about sometimes what people need, and we've done this before. They need to be heard. They need to have those past experiences, traumas sometimes, you know. They need to have space to be heard and listened to, and also sometimes support to process some of that, so that they can kind of have it, you know, out of their kind of daily functioning, as it were. And also, I think some of the things that you can do are supporting people around training up with resilience skills. So one of the things, for example, that we would do is talk about how, you know, we are often in the sympathetic nervous system, which is a threat position, which is a fight or flight, fight, flight, freeze, or appease, actually. So the appeasing, being a people pleaser, can sometimes actually be because you feel threatened. We don't often talk about that, but that's absolutely a thing. So how can people understand they're in that position and get themselves out of that position? Because when you're in that position, you can't think properly, your higher executive function is not working, you can't necessarily bring your values, you can't necessarily behave in a way that you want to behave. And so that's a really key part of improving psychological safety as well. So helping people to kind of understand how to get themselves out of that really kind of fearful position. But also, you know, at the end of the day, the proof will be whether things really have changed, you know, and whether people can step back into a place where they can be themselves and that everybody benefits, including the organisation. And, you know, it's brilliant to hear that you are on that mission. And I probably don't have time to answer all of that question, but very happy. You know, I think you got I'll pop my contact details, if you could, Vanessa, in. Very happy to have those conversations offline and give you a lot more detail.
We'll send out the information after the webinar with Sri's contact details. And I think Graham has a fantastic opportunity now to do a baseline kind of measurement and then perhaps measure success. I think that's a fantastic opportunity, and all the best to you, Graham. James Hurahan, we're not going to finish at 5:02. We're going to get through these questions. Hello, James. Thanks for joining. James delivers training in positive behaviour management in health, education and social care. One of the key issues he identifies is the resistance within organisations to have open communication, which might challenge authority. How would you start that conversation in a respectful and meaningful way?
So this is where you need to get your leaders on board, isn't it? Because, you know, so again, it's about how can the leaders develop their own resilience, their own confidence, and it depends, you know, what's happening above them. So I'll give you, well, a very quick example. So, for example, a lot of the chief execs who work in health, they answer to the ministers, they answer to NHS England, Department of Health, things like that. And if there is a bullying culture that is coming down to them and a very kind of performance led, harsh way of dealing with them, then they have to be able to hold a line. Some leaders, I mean, I read a King's Fund report which said actually part of my role, oh God, excuse me for the swearing here, as a chief exec is to hold up an umbrella and stop all the shit that falls on me from above. Not all leaders can do that. So what happens then is some of that infiltrates as a culture, it goes downwards, that fearfulness of, what I need to achieve, all of this. And I think that some of the answers are around how do you support people lead in all sorts of leadership. Middle management is often a big issue as well. They get stuck right in the middle, and that can often lead to kind of big challenges around psychological safety, around kind of not managing people well, so they go off sick, things like that, because they're stuck in that middle. So the key there is about how do you support leaders to have that internal change, do that internal kind of shift and skilling up and getting to their next levels. For me, coaching is a really key element of that. People need to be open to coaching. For us, when we talk about living your genius, it is about understanding the things that stop us from being great, and getting those barriers, dealing with the barriers so that we can be great and as great as fulfilling our potential. And when we can do that, when leaders can do that, the ripples that come out are just enormous. So if you can get people engaged and interested and getting to their highest potential, however that is, and get them involved in that sort of coaching and reflection and skills learning, that can be a really, really powerful way of doing it. It's not easy, I know. Okay, but great that you're thinking about it.
Wonderful. Okay, Paula Patterson. Hello, Paula. In your experience, Sridevi, what are the significant blockers to a psychologically safe organizational culture when the benefits of this are known or understood?
So I think it's some of the things we've said. It's that kind of pressure. People get pressure from all sorts of different places, external, internal. It can be our own internal kind of issues as well that cause us to have, kind of pressures. And I think it's also that we are changing as a society. We're changing as a culture. And we've kind of got this overhang of a very kind of dictatorial kind of hero type leadership, and we're moving away from that, and the more modern leadership styles are very much about compassionate leadership, servant leadership. Heard of that? That's something that I really believe in, of the leader as the servant, because actually what is leadership? It's getting the best out of everybody who works with you so that they can be the best they can be, bringing that out, developing that in them so that they can do the best work they can possibly do. So you get the best outcomes for the people that you're serving, whoever that is, whether it's patients or whether it's people buying your product, whoever that is. So I think for me, we're kind of it's a really painful process, but I feel like we're in that kind of shift. And you'll know the younger generations will put up with a lot less. I remember when I was a junior doctor, the kind of training that I would do, the 100-hour weeks, the stuff we put up with. And, the people who are coming through now, they're not going to do that. They just won't, and they shouldn't, because times have changed and we should expect more from our workplaces, more from our societies in terms of, what we can expect. Another phrase that I like to use is you get what you tolerate. So in organizations, we get what we tolerate. Okay. So if we tolerate that behavior, we're going to get more of it. So where is your bar? Okay.
Dr. Sridevi, thank you so much. We've got 1 minute to go. We have not answered questions from Raj, but Raj, I've noted your question, and can we get back to you over email? Because we do have your details, if that's okay. I'd just like to say a really big thank you to you, Sridevi, Dr. Sridevi Kaladindi, for sharing your time and experience. We really did get the most out of you today, and I know I got so much out of it. I would just like to mention the next events that the Glass Ceiling Group is hosting. So thank you very much for your comments, Marie, Sarah. It's lovely to hear your feedback in the chat. That's fantastic. Please fill in the feedback form, so important, so we can keep delivering these events. at this high quality. It's amazing that we have Dr. Sridevi today. So thank you very much. 7th of October, that's sold out. 5th of November, would love to see you all at Menopause in the Workplace at Guildhall with Dr. Theodora Kalenzi. Pilates at your desk at Vutarani's in Aldgate. That's going to be a very fun event. That's also, it's publisher, so that's going to be amazing. Future Leaders in Cafe Duke, that's our mentoring program. It's the last event this season. It's free. Please attend. It's always a really, eye-opening evening with, mentors and mentees there. And 26th of November, 50/50 Women on Boards. The link there is coming soon. Please follow our group on LinkedIn. Connect with Sridevi. We'll send out a follow-up email. We'll have all the information in it. And there's a 25% off code for attendees here today who are not a member. Please join. It's GC Chair. And I hope to see you all at an upcoming event soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone for joining. Take care.